Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmed. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace. I think commoditization is the single biggest threat facing any business, anywhere.
I would agree, but I know a lot of people that don't. So let's talk about why that is.
They don't, or they don't think about it?
A little bit of both. I mean, certainly we know with the people that we work with that there is a large contingent that hasn't thought about it, which is one path we go down. And then we have another group who has either thought about it and rejected it, or thought about it and is so afraid to decommoditize that they get themselves and keep themselves in trouble.
Why are they afraid?
They are afraid because the notion of narrowing down your focus, decommoditizing, comes with, I think, a companion fear that you are giving something up, that you're saying no to business, that you're setting something aside, that you're removing yourself from the game. When what we know is the reality is you're actually committing to the game, but there's an emotional shift that is really, really tough for people to make, especially when they're starting out, especially when they're growing, especially when they're scrambling to bring in their initial clients and they don't have a pipeline that's predictable and serving them prospects regularly.
Yeah, 100%. So I just don't think enough people think about commoditization as a business threat. And I'm going to justify for you why I think it is the single most significant threat facing a business. And it all lies in the theory of market efficiency. So what is market efficiency? Market efficiency argues that markets are inherently efficient at finding equilibrium, that markets can inherently find balance and equilibrium between supply and demand and set prices in order to satisfy ultimately the needs of the market, the demand, with the supply that's available. And when you think about what clients want, when a client's shopping for your type of service, if you're listening, whatever, think about your service. When they're shopping for your type of service, what do they want? They want a bunch of really good options that they can choose from. And they ideally want, and they don't necessarily say it this way, but it's built in, ideally want those options to be fairly similar, right? Because if I got 10 good options, they all pretty much look the same to me. They all look pretty good. There's no discernible difference between the 10 options. How am I going to pick, Carrie?
Well, sadly, you're going to pick on price, which is the game we don't want to be in.
The cheapest
Yes.
among all the viable options. And when I find one or two options that are better, different, don't really fit into the pack, and are therefore more expensive, it's almost an inconvenience. Oh, I guess now I have to go and pay this person or this consultant or this firm more money because they're meaningfully different in this very specific way. It's kind of frustrating. And not everyone's going to do that. There are certain types of buyers that'll just buy the cheaper option. As a general rule, don't try to sell to them, right? And then there are buyers who will certainly pay the premium for value when they see it, but it's a bit of a burden. It's a bit of an inconvenience. I guess we better have to go with you guys because you're better and therefore more expensive. And so these are the market forces at play. The market wants you to be a commodity. The market wants to be efficient. And clients want a bunch of options that they can choose from so they can make the decision based on what's cheaper, what's more convenient. Do you work down the street? Do you have Zoom meetings? Are your payment terms agreeable? It's not just price, right? It's all these convenience factors that they're looking for. But they can only choose that way if all the options are the same. So what we experience quite often on our team, and Carrie, you've seen this firsthand, is people come and talk to our enrollment team or our sales team, and they'll say, well, I'm looking at you guys, I'm looking at this other option and that option, other option, and this company, and that company. Now, we know that our offer, our program, our solutions are nothing like those other options. but they don't know that, or they choose not to see it so they can make a decision or a choice among a bunch of commodities. That's their preference. That's how they want to buy.
What I think is really interesting about that is you indicated that we know our offer is different. What I find interesting is when we're working with consultants, the first hurdle to get over with a lot of them is for them to see their offer as different. So it's a two-step process, right? The first step is, how do you get really confident in the fact that you're providing something different to the market? And then B, which is almost the easy part once we get the first part out of the way, how do you ensure that the market sees it that way? And I'm curious, for the folks that are listening, if you truly believe that you are providing a service that is different than people who you would see as your quote unquote competitors, or if you see yourself as a commodity. Because if you're coming from that headspace, then this is way, way, way more difficult.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's two steps, right? One is to genuinely decommoditize the offer of the service, and we can talk a little bit about how to do that. And then secondly, once you're there, to effectively communicate that distinction, that differentiation, if you want to call it that, to the marketplace. What we find with our clients is there's a couple of ways to decommoditize, and they both have to do with the keyword that you mentioned earlier, narrowing focus. So one of the things that we say to clients is, we're going to teach you how to be a meaningful specific instead of a wandering generality. And the generalist trap is a really common trap among consultants, professional service providers, for reasons I think you alluded to earlier. The fear is, if I narrow my focus too much, what happens? Lose business, miss out on opportunity. And it's almost illogical, right? Why would I narrow my focus and miss out on all this opportunity? Why is that thinking flawed, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, the reality is you want your best possible prospects, the people that you want to work with, to look at you and say, that is the person for me. Not that is one of 10 people who could probably sort of do the thing that I need. I mean, the thing that's going to be compelling to people is to know that you are narrowing your focus and able to solve their specific problem. So not just their specific problem, but maybe more importantly, their specific problem for them. And I think the other kind of fallacy in the thinking that happens here is the notion that if I narrow, then everything else disappears, right? The only thing that's going to be available to me is what's in the bright spotlight of my focus. And what we actually know is what it does is it just makes you more interesting. It doesn't mean that you don't do something slightly outside of that focus, if that's a thing that you want to do, if it makes sense, financially and for you in terms of your business. And what we often find is that it starts to, you talked about supply and demand, right? It often will increase demand. Because when someone identifies themselves, a potential client of yours, as maybe not the right fit, but they really like what you're talking about, maybe not quite, at the tier of the people that you're working with, then they start to try to get themselves into your area of attention. And that's a very different thing than you trying to sell up to them. So it's interesting because all of this is counterintuitive in a lot of ways initially at face value. But the narrowing of focus, the sort of, putting yourself in a place where you are the hero that is solving a particular problem in a particular way for a particular client really makes you more attractive to, yes, that client, but also, folks who are adjacent to that group. So it's kind of a fascinating thing that happens.
And it flips everything on its head. In the example that we gave earlier about commoditization, we were talking about how clients would generally prefer for you to be a commodity and everyone else in your market, all your competitors, to be commodities, and to pretty much look and sound exactly the same so they can choose based on price or whatever's most convenient to them. It's almost like they would prefer that working with you or choosing to work with somebody else is kind of irrelevant. It's all the same. That's what they want. And on the other hand, if you're walking around saying, well, I don't want to narrow my focus because I want to be open to working with anybody and everybody, what you're saying effectively is all clients are created equal. I'll take anybody. Whoever wants to work with me, I'm open to working with them. Everyone's the same. All engagements are the same. All clients represent the same amount of value to me. I enjoy working with all types of clients the same way. It's all, makes no difference. Which, if you've spent any time working with clients, you will agree that's categorically untrue. Some clients are better than others in terms of their fit for your value proposition, their the revenue potential, the fit with your expertise, how you mesh with the client in terms of personalities and psychographics, all those things. So why not make the choice? I think is the question here. Why not make the choice to focus in on the clients that you believe you can serve best, and then deliberately go after those clients and put a message to that market that attracts them?
Yeah, what it really comes down to, and for those of you who are listening to this, something to think through is the difference between I can work with them and I should work with them, or I want to work with them. We work with brilliantly talented people who have done a lot of things, have a lot of skills, broad capabilities. And the reality is, yes, they could work with a much broader group than they should work with. And the qualifications around should are going to be different potentially for you, your business, what it is that you want to accomplish. But the can I work with them comes from a sense of need, right? Like I need the client. And we're going to talk in other episodes about why that's problematic. But when you shift from that notion of like I'm chasing them, who could work with me, who can I connect to getting crystal clear about the should or the want to, then that's the thing that can change everything. So I think we should talk for a minute about how to do this. But I think the important thing to note is that a ton of this is really internal, right? This is how you are viewing yourself, your business, your solution, your clients, and really your position in the market.
Yeah. Yeah, it begins with that internal belief, as you mentioned earlier, right? If you look at your market and you look at all of your competitors and you look at what they're doing and you look at what you're doing and you go, I don't know. It's all the same. I'm not doing anything meaningfully different from what they're doing. Then that's a problem. And the first problem that we need to solve is your belief around your offer, your service, your business, and how it's uniquely distinct. A couple of ways to approach that. Number one is the market selection. That is choosing which market to play in. Most consultants, before they work with us, have very little specialization or a very broad description of their target market. The bane of our existence is when people say, "So what's your target market?" And they go, "Well, it's small businesses." Or the flip side, it's Fortune 500.
Or I can solve this for anyone. That's my favorite.
Yeah,
I can solve this for
anybody
anybody.
really. It's all the same. We can do this for anybody. I get that you can, but again, should you? To your point, Carrie, small businesses, my favorite answer is about what 80 to 90% of the economy. So is that what you're telling me? That 80 to 90% of the economy is squarely within your target market? It's a lazy answer, right? And so the simplest way to decommoditize is to make strategic choices about where to play. And one of the exercises that we go through inside our program, 90-Day Pipeline, is the first exercise, in fact. It's a ranking and prioritization of target markets, market segments. So we do answer the question, yeah, where could you play? Sure, that's a fair question. What are all the different possibilities? What are all the different markets? And we like beginning that exercise with, what are the markets you've already served? If you already have an existing business, a going concern, where have you worked? What markets have you served? Let's make that list. And then we take clients through a fairly objective, rigorous assessment of which markets are actually the best fit for them, and all kinds of realizations stem from that process. That's the first thing. The second thing, and they're not mutually exclusive by any means, is decommoditizing or differentiating the offer and the service itself. So it's actually impossible for you to deliver the exact same thing as somebody else. It just can't be. You're not them. Your expertise is not the exact same as theirs. Your experience is not the exact same as theirs. There's nobody else that has a complete replica of experience and expertise and skill sets and capabilities that you have. So there is something that's going to be unique in your delivery and the way that you deliver your service, the way that you satisfy client needs. There's going to be something in there. You might not know what it is, but it's there. And if you know what it is, if you can find it, you can bring it out, articulate it, demonstrate it, talk about it, and make that a meaningful differentiator.
Brilliant. And maybe one last thing I'll say about this, because again, we know that there's a lot of internal angst that comes with making this kind of a decision. One of the things that we say to the folks that we work with, and I'll say to those of you who are listening, is that this isn't the last decision you're ever going to make. And sometimes it's hard for folks to make this choice, right? And to narrow down, because there's this feeling inside of them that this is the end, right? I'm going to make this decision and this is the path I'm on forever and ever for the rest of my life. Nothing can ever change. And that is it. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. This is about making the next best decision at a point in time that's going to allow you to grow your business. And you know what? 6 months from now, you may think about that group of clients that you've worked with and decide that you want to make a shift. And then you go back through the exercise, right? But you do it in an intentional way as opposed to being pulled into whatever client base, happens to be the place where you land. So I think that's something to just consider if you are listening to us and you're believing what we're saying. You're bumping up against some of the fear. Just recognize that this is, yes, a decision and an important decision, but it is, it's not the last path you're ever going to choose.
Well, and the flip side, after you've reassured people, I'm going to scare them again. The flip side is not only is it going to change, it necessarily has to change because markets are dynamic. And so when you have new entrants coming into the market, you have competitors coming up with different value propositions, you have different messages being put into the marketplace that all shape the way your clients, your prospects, your marketplace views the problem they're facing, the solution that you deliver. As that evolves, you need to evolve with it. So if we take our business as an example, we've been around for 7-10 years, but at a level of scale more meaningfully in the last 4 or 5 years, we've really had a presence in the market. And it's changed. The way that we communicate today, I mean, the core business hasn't changed. That's an important thing to highlight here. The core business, the core offer, the core proposition has not changed. How we communicate with the market over the past 4 or 5 years has changed radically, year after year after year, because the market's changing. The market that we're selling to now is not the same as it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, even a year ago. And so we've got to change with it.
Yeah, I'm going to refine that a little bit because I think you're right. Like the core hasn't changed, but at the same time that the market has evolved, we have evolved. And that is partially because of market forces and partially because of we have evolved. And that's going to be true for all of you, right? You are going to gain more experience. You are going to, find new types of people that maybe you haven't worked with before. And you're going to make choices at the same time as the market is making choices. And so this is a long game and, one that deserves to be revisited on a really regular basis.
Well, I think you kind of threw that out there. This is a long game, as if it really is for everybody. But that's probably worth a little bit of emphasis, and we can wrap up on this. This is easier if you're playing the long game. If you're playing the kind of a short profit taking, I want to make as much money as possible, and and just get this thing going really, really quickly, and then get in and get out. Everything's harder then. If you're taking the long game, and the long game being your career as a consultant, professional service provider, etc., then you could take the time to make the decisions, observe market forces, observe market changes, test your approach, test different markets, test different offers. A lot of our clients ask us, how do I know when a market is the right choice for me? And the answer is, you don't know until you've done a certain volume of projects. Like, yes, we take clients through a process of choosing markets, but you're not really gonna be able to conclude if that is the market to pursue until you've done a handful of engagements. That could take a year. That could take a couple of years. So if you're playing the long game, you buy yourself the time to make decisions, pursue a path, see it through, and then iterate on the results.